Hello, everybody. My name is Tanasia Jones. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am the programs director at the Theater Offensive. Thank you so much for joining us today. We would like to begin this show by talking about the land that the Theater Offensive and perhaps even you are on. TTO creates work in Boston, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Wampanoag, Nipmuc, and Massachusetts people. We believe it is important to understand and honor the history of the Indigenous land that we are on, while recognizing that just saying this is not enough and does not undo the history of violence towards Indigenous people. Our organization and staff pledge to hold space and take small steps forward towards the future of decolonization and reconciliation. For more information, you can also visit native-land.ca. It's in your chat function right now to find out which land you are on. Also, in the tradition of art made by queer and trans people of color, we want to create a healing and sacred space within the chat function of this YouTube broadcast. To create this sacred space, we are setting some community standards to prevent further trauma and or oppression to our QTPOC community members. We invite you to feel how you want to feel, to speak from your own experience, to claim and own your emotions and struggles and express your wants and needs as such, your own. No cyberbullying of any kind will be tolerated in this sacred and brave space. If such incidents happen, we will remove the posts immediately so other folks can process their respective thoughts, emotions, connections, and questions in the chat function. We thank you in advance for helping us maintain and defend this sacred space. Ashe. Thank you so much for joining us for this Radical Futures on Affirmational Drawing for Love and Liberation with Chetna Mehta. Our fabulous artist for this episode is Chetna. Chetna is a granddaughter of Indian and South African diasporas. As an educating artist, alchemist, and facilitator, playing and working at the intersection of the arts, spirituality, and education. They founded Mosaic Eye LLC, a private therapeutic practice and a movement with a mission to steward peace, love, and freedom on earth via expressive healing arts and reflective community circles. She collaborates with progressive organizations, coalitions, and social movements by offering embodied experiences, education, and talks on themes like collective purpose, holistic well-being, decolonizing and liberatory creativity, compassion, connection, and peaceful communication. They're a consultant to BIPOC, queer women, and non-binary clients around the world who represent paradoxical identities and life experiences, who have been challenged and claim our belonging audaciously in diverse contexts, and who seek to embody the courage it takes to creatively pave an authentic and aligned way for ourselves and the community we care about. Chetna holds a BA in social sciences with a concentration on organizations from Cali Poly University, SOL, and an MA in counseling psychology from the Wright Institute. She is YT2000 trained from a liberation-oriented perspective and continues to develop their training into nonviolent communication, mindful self-compassion, and yoga philosophy rooted in decolonization and indigenous wisdom. She is currently living and making intending on Muwaketme Alone tribal land, also known as San Jose, California. Without further ado, let me and I introduce the artist who we are super, super proud of having here today, Chetna, and their artistic offering.
So this episode is on affirmational drawing for love and liberation. It's not about technique at all whatsoever, but it's more about the spirit of permission to offer emotional support and encouragement, which is affirmation, through our birthright of putting pen to page. If we have opposable thumbs, or even if we don't, we can draw. So in the spirit of inviting us back into this practice of what drawing is, very inclusive, very available to each of us, that's so much of what this workshop is about. And this takes a very decolonial lens of creativity. It's making drawing available to us. It's removing the barrier of re-entry into this practice. And it's uplifting the energy of play and self-expression. So I just want to share a quick story about how I came upon this practice. It was in a space of desperation, anxiety, hopelessness, so much longing and fear that gave me this practice, I will say. This was back in 2016 in the fall. I was a mental health counselor for inner city youth at John O'Connell High School in San Francisco. And it was around the time Trump was elected. I was working with a lot of Black and brown kids whose livelihoods were threatened just by what was happening politically and socially. And here I was as a counselor in the room with these youth, needing to be a pillar of groundedness, of hope, of support. And I myself was feeling so dysregulated and not knowing how to show up in a way that was beneficial to them, with them. So after being prompted by my sister-in-law at the time to draw daily, I decided to return to the new year of 2017 with a practice, with a ritual that I was going to do. And that was 5 minutes at least of daily drawing, whatever I wanted to put on the page. Sometimes it was just feeling into my mood and letting my hand and my pen or marker express on the page. Sometimes I was asking the question, what am I longing to hear right now? And sometimes I had no idea, and I was just showing up to the practice. That was my success point, just showing up. The outcome was irrelevant. Whether I spent 30 minutes or just 5 minutes that day was irrelevant, because my measure of success was showing up to the practice for at least 5 minutes in a day. And when I asked the question, what am I longing to hear right now? Which was a question that invited me back into myself, into offering the possibility of affirmation to myself. There were some days where my response was, I don't freaking know. And maybe that's okay. And sometimes my response was, you are connected, you are purposeful, you are important. It just depended on where I was that day. And this practice allowed me to meet myself where I was. That was 6 years ago, 7 years ago, and I still do this practice today. It informs so much of not only how I care for myself, but also how I care for my relationships, for the folks I work with, for people I don't know, who I don't get to see the face of, who engage with the art. So I'd love to offer that to you here. The first thing I would really invite to do is to set the space. And there are many ways that we could do this. Setting the space could look like choosing a time that you are going to dedicate to this practice. It could be 5 minutes, it could be 2 hours, it could be 5 minutes a day, it could be an hour a week, it could be a one-time experiment. But whatever it is, you choose the space. It could also be outside in the sun. It could be in the comfort of your bed, under a tree, a location that offers something to you, to your groundedness, to your ease, to your comfort. And it also is setting the space in your body, being embodied as much as possible. So much of knowing what is affirming to us is taking a few breaths deeply into our bodies to know what's actually needed in this moment. The energy of affirmation really comes from our hearts, not so much our minds or what we think we should say or what we think is the right way to approach a situation, but more so what do we feel we need in this moment? So we'll touch on this shortly, but this part of setting the space reminds me of a quote by Robert Henry, a painter, who said, "The object isn't to make art. It's to be in that wonderful state which makes art inevitable." And this again reiterates the wisdom that art already lives within us. Our ability to draw already lives within us. Affirmation already lives within us. And that it's more a matter of getting grounded in that wisdom as opposed to forcing or trying for something as if it isn't there, as if we have to reach outside of ourselves to get it or access it. So I'll invite us now for just a few moments to sit back in your chair or whatever you're held by as you watch this. And just notice your breath in this moment. Noticing the parts of your body that are expanding with your inhale and contracting with your exhale. It's very common for us as humans with negativity bias to notice the parts of discomfort or tension when we take the time to feel into the space of our bodies. And that's okay if that's happening, that's natural. But take a moment here just to feel into maybe a part of your body or a space in your body where you feel love or freedom. It could be in your ears, in your hands. Could be in your feet. Could be in your seat or your heart. Without intellectualizing it, just notice. Notice what that space, wherever it might be, feels like. And taking 3 deep breaths into the space. And coming back, knowing that this is available to you, that a space of love or freedom may show up differently in your body at different times. Sometimes it may feel really accessible. Sometimes you might have to take a few more breaths into it before you identify it or recognize it. But this is very much part of setting the space. The other thing that I hold as an important value when it comes to the practice of affirmational drawing is giving permission to do it badly. I first heard this permission of doing something badly in an improv class that I took once in Chicago. And I've held this very closely since in my personal practice and my educational practice with folks I work with to keep giving ourselves permission to do something badly. And to me, this has sometimes looked like showing up to this practice of affirmational drawing and just giving myself permission to hold my marker and make all kinds of lines that make no sense on the page, literally doodling, scribbling, whatever. And knowing that that counts too, that that is a truth of how I'm feeling internally on the page in front of me and that it's valid. There's something that's so affirmational, actually, to see that on the page for me sometimes, as opposed to feeling it inside. When I give myself permission to do something badly, I transcend comparing mind which when it comes to drawing can be so pervasive in my mind as I visually bring forth the artwork of artists I admire or what I think a drawing should be. There's so many ways in which I carry the indoctrination of capitalism, of colonial mentality that makes me think my creativity should be a certain way. And giving myself permission to do something badly is giving myself permission to be authentic with whatever is present. To let it be exactly what it is, which is the spirit of play. And it allows me to meet myself where I am. Part of this is being in practice of releasing perfectionism. Perfectionism is rampant. It is an epidemic in post-colonial society. Yet it's amazing how a practice of a person, a pen, and a page can be a form of activism here. By giving ourselves permission to not only do something badly, but release perfectionism is within us resisting white supremacy and the need for it to look a certain way. Sometimes I'll even, if I find perfectionism very oppressive, that I can't shake it, I will even draw what perfectionism feels like for me in my body. And that is yet another way to affirm that, yeah, this experience is really real right now. And I don't have to get rid of it per se or deny it. I'm better able to release it when I'm able to release it on the page and let it exist and move through me. So part of affirmational drawing is not trying to force ourselves into a positive way of seeing ourselves, but rather to validate and provide support emotionally for what is present here and now. There's something too about, again, our somatic sensations being in the body when we're doing this practice. And that brings a lot of mindfulness and embodiment to this, feeling the sensations of the pen in my hand, the smoothness of it, the weight of it, feeling my hand resting on the surface that I'm drawing on, feeling held by the seat that I'm in, feeling the point of my pen on the page, playing with different speeds, shapes, lines, thickness, thinness. One of my glimmers, which according to a researcher named Deb Dana, is the opposite of triggers. Glimmers are the opposite of triggers, is feeling a ballpoint pen on a page. There's something about that as a glimmer that soothes my nervous system, that gets me really grounded, really present. And anything that is a glimmer is something that puts your nervous system in a state of parasympathetic functioning, as opposed to sympathetic functioning, activation, fight, flight, freeze, etc. A glimmer is something that puts us into a state of rest and digest and trust and connection. So there's something about being embodied in this practice that automatically soothes our nervous system when we're able to get into our heart spaces, into our hands, into potentially the spaces of our bodies that we feel freedom and love in, and really being in touch with that space as we're putting pen to page. This also allows us to let the process have the magic that's inherent to it and to take off the pedestal the outcome. Again, perhaps the success of affirmational drawing is not the outcome, having a pretty piece of art, rather being in a state of self-soothing through the process. And in this way, I also find this practice super decolonial. that it's not about what you produce, but it's how you process. And lastly, here to really drive this point home, being nonsensical in your drawings is freedom. Not having it make sense or look pretty or look understandable or remarkable is the freedom that you could be giving yourself in this process. You may write words in the mix. You may not. It may be a completely wordless piece that you end up with. Maybe drawing words in any which way or font or free flow would feel good to you. Maybe not. I play with both. It just depends. Sometimes I'll have an affirmation in my mind through words, through sensations, and I put it on the page with those words or not, but I still hold them. The visual still reminds me of it. Sometimes the words and the visual don't relate at all. It doesn't have to make sense. The words, the symbols, the lines, the shapes, they could just be as they are. And what I found in this practice is that I often surprise myself. And I'm still surprised, even 6 years, 7 years into this practice, I still feel so much soothing. And when I ask myself the question, where in my body can I access some freedom or some love, or what am I longing to hear in this moment? Sometimes stuff comes out that I would not have anticipated. This practice has informed how I care for myself and also how I share affirmation with others. The more I'm comfortable with giving myself these affirmational drawings, seeing it outside of myself, being with it, the more I'm comfortable expressing that to others too, gifting it to others. So there's a strong correlation between the love that I give to myself through this practice and how I can give my love to others as well. So just a couple points on affirmation practice. Affirmations are medicine in the right time. And they don't always have to be, quote unquote, aspirational. Sometimes the most beautiful affirmation could just acknowledge and validate exactly where we are. But either way, I recommend using present tense. For example, I am free versus I will be free. Really acknowledging what's present here and now. When I say use positive statements, I don't mean, be positive. I just mean focus on what you want, not what you don't want. So, for example, it's okay to feel sad is an affirmation that's positively framed. Versus, it's okay to not be happy. Unless that resonates, which it very well could, I recommend veering towards what you are validating as opposed to what you're not trying to validate. Or I have life force energy within me versus I am not tired. Let it be short and sweet. Something about heart wisdom, as I've noticed it, both in myself and in the artists, writers, folks who speak from the heart, is that it is succinct. And use you or I or we, depending on how and what hits the most for you. Sometimes it really feels so soothing to use you as opposed to I, as if someone wiser is speaking to me. And when I am accessing parts of my body that feel love or feel freedom when I'm in nature during this practice, I absolutely believe that there is something available to me that is communicating with me. And the word you, for example, feels a lot more resonant and true. So here are some examples. I am allowed to feel different feelings at the same time. You are doing your best. I see the parts of myself that are hard to be with. I love this one because it's not telling me I need to be a certain way. It's validating and acknowledging the work that it takes even just to see the parts of ourselves, myself, that's hard to be with. I am allowed to forgive myself. I got your back. This one has been really relevant for me recently. I am free right here and right now. You are safe to be exactly as you are. Another world is coming. I take action to support this. Sometimes, as I said, you may feel that these affirmations come after you've drawn something and let your flow on the page. Sometimes you might have the words already and a drawing comes after that. It doesn't matter the order, really just trust your flow. But I would invite you to play with this, setting the space, giving yourself permission to do it badly. Acknowledging the activism that comes with resisting perfectionism, or even just naming it as it's presencing itself in your space. And being willing to surprise yourself. Here are a few questions to inspire, to breathe life into this practice for you. Really starting perhaps by setting the space in your body. Where do I feel love or freedom? There's always spaces there. We just may not always be paying enough attention to it, but it's always there. And if we can access it even a little bit to inform our practice or to be alongside us, be with us in our practice. What am I longing to hear right now? I found that responses to this question have been the most quote unquote cliche, like, you are smart, you are important, I got you. Yet in the right time, when I allow it, it hits. It hits like a dagger in the best way. And another question is, what do I need most in this moment? When we ask this question from a place of love and curiosity, it is amazing the wisdom that we get. And it could be as simple as, I need a nap, or I need to have a conversation with this person, or I need the sun on my skin. And through our practice, we can reveal our needs to ourselves more readily, more visually, and more clearly. So I wish you best in this practice. I hope it serves you. I hope you're able to see yourself in the spirit of play, experimentation, love, and freedom.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning into our very first episode of Radical Futures. I know I cannot wait to go make my glimmer jar. Have you already made yours yet? Right? Maybe I have to. This small series of events is a part of our annual series of artist offerings and workshops titled Radical Futures, which is housed in our Queer Republic programming. Through this year's Radical Futures, we are dedicating our energy towards the celebration of artistic practice, healing, and ritual reflected in QTPOC femme-led art. Radical Futures goals are to honor Black feminism, its legacy, and its crucial role in queer liberation, to acknowledge that Black women and femmes are inherently valuable, and that our joy in artistic practice is inherent activism, to practice collective care as an essential ingredient to solidarity and collective liberation, and to amplify Black women, femmes, and gender-expansive individuals. Up next, we will be exploring the practice of theatrical ceremony with Ebony Noel Golden and her production of The Keeping at Weeksfield's historical site. Link to RSVP in advance and the information regarding that episode is being dropped in the chat function right now. So go, please RSVP. If you're interested in supporting our organization and any of our future Career Public programming, please visit us at thetheateroffensive.org. The link is in the chat right now. And I want to say support comes in a myriad of ways, right? You can support by coming, you can support by showing up, you can support by dropping us a message of love that we could use, and you can support with your financial resources as well. So there's so many different ways how to support our program. The link is in the chat. And I want to thank each and every one of you so much for joining us here for this very first episode of Radical Futures. I am Tanisha Jones again, and thank you so much for joining us. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye.